They don't want you to know this. Right now, across 10 Canadian cities, a financial disaster is unfolding in slow motion, and it's already too late to stop it. Mortgage delinquencies are spiking, property values are plummeting, and hundreds of thousands of families are about to lose everything they've worked for. I've spent weeks analyzing the data, tracking the patterns, following the money trail that leads to one undeniable conclusion. 2026 will bring the worst foreclosure crisis Canada has seen in decades. But here's what's truly chilling. The cities about to be hit hardest aren't the ones you'd expect. Some are booming oil towns, others are quiet maritime cities that nobody saw coming. And the number one city on this list? It's facing a complete financial meltdown that will reshape an entire region. If you own property in any of these 10 cities, or you're thinking about buying, you need to watch every second of this video, because by the time the mainstream media catches on to what's happening, it'll be too late. The bloodbath has already begun. Before we dive into number 10, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the economic realities that mainstream media won't touch. If you want to stay ahead of Canada's housing collapse and protect your financial future, you need to be here when I release the next investigation. Now, let's get into it. The signs are everywhere, written in the language of economic distress that few want to acknowledge. Across Canada, a perfect storm is brewing, one that threatens to reshape the housing landscape in ways not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Interest rates that skyrocketed from near zero to over 5% in less than 2 years have left hundreds of thousands of homeowners trapped in a vice. Variable rate mortgages that once seemed like clever financial planning now feel like ticking time bombs, with monthly payments that have doubled or even tripled. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation reports that mortgage delinquency rates are climbing at their fastest pace in over a decade, while household debt-to-income ratios hover near record highs above 180%. This isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This is the precursor to a wave of financial devastation that will crash hardest on 10 specific cities. What makes this crisis particularly insidious is its slow-motion nature. Unlike a sudden market crash, this foreclosure wave builds gradually, city by city, neighborhood by neighborhood. Homeowners who stretched their budgets to breaking point during the pandemic buying frenzy now find themselves underwater, owing more than their homes are worth as property values correct downward. The cities on this list share common threads. Overheated markets that saw explosive price growth, economies heavily dependent on single industries, or populations with high debt loads and limited wage growth. As we count down from number 10 to the city facing the most severe foreclosure crisis, remember, these aren't predictions pulled from thin air. These are real places where real families are about to face their darkest financial nightmares. Calgary thought it had learned its lesson from previous oil crashes, but history has a cruel way of repeating itself. The city's economy, still overwhelmingly tied to the energy sector, faces renewed pressure as global oil markets destabilize and the transition toward renewable energy accelerates. During the pandemic boom, Calgary's housing market roared back to life, with prices surging over 30% in some neighborhoods, drawing in buyers who believed the good times would last forever. But the city's unemployment rate remains stubbornly elevated compared to national averages, and many of those recent buyers work in industries directly or indirectly connected to oil and gas. When energy companies tighten belts, Calgary bleeds, and that blood is about to flow through the foreclosure courts. The warning signs flashed brightest in Calgary's suburban sprawl, where massive new developments attracted young families with promises of affordable homeownership. These outer neighborhoods, places like Mahogany and Auburn Bay, now face a double threat: falling property values as the market corrects, and rising carrying costs that many homeowners simply cannot afford. Mortgage brokers in the city report a surge in desperate refinancing attempts, while insolvency trustees note a sharp uptick in consultations. Calgary's foreclosure crisis won't explode overnight. It will grind forward relentlessly as more homeowners realize they're trapped between impossible mortgage payments and homes worth less than what they owe. Halifax was supposed to be the success story, the small but mighty maritime city that finally hit the big time. An influx of remote workers and interprovincial migrants fleeing Toronto and Vancouver's astronomical prices sent Halifax's housing market into a frenzy that saw prices nearly double in some areas between 2020 and 2023. Working-class neighborhoods that once housed fishermen and dock workers suddenly commanded prices that would have seemed laughable just years earlier. Local buyers, desperate not to be priced out of their own city, stretched their finances to the absolute limit, taking on massive debt loads to compete with cash-rich arrivals from wealthier provinces. Now, as remote work mandates end and some of those newcomers return to their origin cities, Halifax faces a reckoning. The city's economy, while growing, simply cannot support the housing prices that speculation created. Average incomes in Halifax lag far behind other major Canadian cities, yet housing costs now rival much larger markets. Service workers, healthcare employees, and young professionals who bought at the peak now find themselves house poor, dedicating 50% or more of their income to mortgage payments. As interest rates remain elevated and the initial migration wave slows, property values have begun their inevitable retreat. For those who bought in 2021 and 2022, equity is evaporating. Halifax's foreclosure wave will hit hardest in the bedroom communities and formerly affordable neighborhoods where locals made panic purchases, convinced they had to buy now or be priced out forever. Kelowna sold itself as paradise, pristine lakes, mountain views, and a lifestyle that promised escape from urban grind. The city became a magnet for retirees, remote workers, and lifestyle migrants during the pandemic, with housing prices exploding by over 50% as buyers from Vancouver flooded the market. Bidding wars became routine, and locals found themselves competing against deep-pocketed outsiders for homes in their own community. Many Kelowna residents, particularly younger buyers and service industry workers essential to the city's tourism economy, took on crushing debt loads just to stay in the city they called home. Now, as the tourism sector faces headwinds and the cost of living spirals upward, those mortgage payments feel less like investments and more like anchors dragging families underwater. The crisis brewing in Kelowna goes beyond simple overextension. The city's economy depends heavily on seasonal tourism and agriculture, industries that don't generate the high incomes needed to sustain current housing costs. As property taxes rise to fund infrastructure for rapid growth and utility costs climb, homeowners face death by 1,000 cuts. The most vulnerable are those who bought investment properties or vacation homes during the boom, intending to rent them out or flip them for profit. With rental markets softening and buyers disappearing, these speculative owners find themselves trapped. Kelowna's foreclosure crisis will unfold in waves, first the investors and speculators, then the overextended locals who can no longer afford paradise. Windsor's fate has always been tied to Detroit's automotive industry, and that relationship is about to exact a terrible price. The transition to electric vehicles disrupts traditional automotive manufacturing, threatening thousands of well-paying union jobs that form the backbone of Windsor's middle class. During the pandemic, Windsor's housing market surged as Toronto residents discovered they could buy entire houses for the price of a Toronto condo. Prices jumped over 40% in 2 years, creating a market completely disconnected from local wage fundamentals. Now, as automotive sector uncertainty grows, and those Toronto transplants realize Windsor isn't quite the paradise they imagined, the market correction accelerates with brutal efficiency. Windsor homeowners face a uniquely challenging situation. Their city's economic future remains uncertain, while their mortgage payments reflect boom-time prices. Neighborhoods near the automotive plants, once considered stable working-class havens, now teeter on the edge as layoffs and plant closures loom. The mortgage stress is most acute among families who upgraded during the boom, selling modest homes to buy their dream properties with the assumption that incomes would remain stable. As automotive jobs disappear or convert to lower-paying electric vehicle positions, those dreams curdle into nightmares. Windsor's foreclosure crisis represents the collision of deindustrialization with housing market excess, a toxic combination that will devastate working families who believed they were making safe, conservative choices. At number 6, Barrie, Ontario faces disaster as the ultimate commuter city. An hour north of Toronto, Barrie became a bedroom community for workers willing to endure brutal commutes for affordable housing. Prices doubled as Toronto buyers flooded in. But now remote work mandates are ending, forcing impossible choices between soul-crushing commutes and unsustainable mortgages. At number 5, Oshawa, Ontario confronts the same automotive sector disruption as Windsor, but with even higher household debt levels and greater dependence on General Motors operations. Number 4 brings us to London, Ontario, where a student rental market collapse combines with overbuilding and speculative excess. Investors who bought multiple properties expecting endless student demand now face vacancies and negative cash flow. At number 3, Winnipeg, Manitoba, struggles with Canada's longest-standing affordability crisis meeting rising interest rates. A city where incomes never matched housing costs now watches as variable rate mortgages reset to crushing levels. Number 2 is Hamilton, Ontario, the poster child for speculation gone wrong, where Toronto's spillover created a market bubble that's now deflating rapidly, leaving working-class families holding mortgages they can never afford on homes worth far less than they paid. But number 1, the city facing the absolute worst foreclosure bloodbath in 2026 is Brampton, Ontario. This city represents the perfect storm, the highest household debt loads in Canada, a population of recent immigrants and young families who stretched beyond their limits, massive overbuilding creating supply gluts, and an economy offering primarily low-wage service jobs. Brampton's housing market exploded during the pandemic as Greater Toronto Area buyers pushed outward, driving prices to levels completely unsustainable given local incomes. Now, with interest rates elevated and mortgage renewals forcing payment increases of $1,000 or more monthly, Brampton homeowners face impossible arithmetic. The city's foreclosure crisis will be Canada's worst, not because Brampton residents were reckless, but because they were trapped between the dream of home ownership and an economy that could never support the prices speculation created. As 2026 unfolds, Brampton's courthouses will overflow with foreclosure proceedings, a grim testament to a housing market that forgot its fundamental purpose, providing shelter, not speculation. The foreclosure bloodbath of 2026 isn't a maybe, it's a certainty. The only question is how bad it gets and who survives it. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in Canada's housing market, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. I'm tracking this crisis in real time, and you need to see what's coming next. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you live in one of these 10 cities? Are you seeing the warning signs in your neighborhood? The community here is watching this unfold together, and your insights matter. Hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next investigation. Stay vigilant out there.